So now we've caught up with week number 2. We go into week number 3, and it flows through from week 2 in one sense. We are looking at water this week. John chapter 3, verse 5, no one can enter the kingdom of God without being born of water and the Spirit. John chapter 4, verses 5 to 42, and I think Gift can read it.
So Jesus came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who is it that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well, and with his sons and his flocks drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I give will become in them a spring of water, gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come back." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say that the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father seeks such as these to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will proclaim all things to us." Jesus said to her, "I am he, the one who is speaking to you." Just then, his disciples came. They were astonished that he was speaking to a woman, but no one said, "What do you want?" or "Why are you speaking with her?"
Maybe we should just pause there. It's a very long passage, and people can pick up with the rest of it, but you get the general sense of this. And the question that we need to ask, I enthusiastically throw my book around, is what is the importance of water in your life? And I immediately think, well, because it's quick thoughts, without water we're very smelly people.
For cleansing, for quenching the thirst, for cooling the cars.
So many things that water gets used for, isn't it? John 4:13, Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again." And there comes this big question now. What do you really thirst for? And of course, when you're dealing with nice, pious, religious people, they always give you nice, pious answers. But this is a very deep question: is what are you thirsting for? Remember, a bit like Nicodemus when he came searching. What is this deep thing that you want from God? And it's got so many different layers. Sometimes I just would like a very different church. I'm not talking about my congregation here specifically. I'm talking about the nature of the broader church that I belong to, the Diocese of Johannesburg. Some of the things that I encounter that I'm not happy with in the church, that disturb me deeply. On a bigger level, I would want a church that is truly inclusive. Something I do thirst for is sense of real belonging and incorporation into the life of the church for those of us part of the LGBTQI grouping within the church. I think those would be some of the deep things that I look at when I think about what would quench my thirst. Because I could add to a whole lot more of those. How do we get human beings to really appreciate the scarce earth that we are busy destroying at a rapid rate? How do we get human beings to be at peace with one another, to work for the well-being of each other and for creation? And don't get me started, I think I could go on for quite a long time. What about you?
I think lately I thirst for seeing Christians living their Christian life in everyday life, in our community especially. I thirst to see us holding each other accountable in whatever roles we hold, so that we bring the common good than being selfish in our corners. I thirst for, when we're saying we are Christians, a Christian community, I thirst for that one community coming together, living out their Christian calling.
I think that Jesus would have had quite a time with us. So, Thomas Green writes this: Jesus lived in a world where water was much more precious a commodity. Well, true, except that in many parts of the Third World, what Thomas Green goes on to say is still today the same thing. Not only was it scarce, but much of what was available was dangerous, stagnant water, and was the breeding ground for some of the diseases most feared by man. For him and his people, the value of water, good water, flowing water, what Jesus called living water, was very great. It's not surprising that he so frequently uses water as a symbol of life and of salvation. So now we're going to look a little bit at water and prayer. St. Teresa was my inspiration for this when I was writing this course. She said that prayer is like a garden that needs to be watered. John 6:35 Jesus says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Prayer is like bringing water, she says, to plants so that they may grow and to flower. And she says, as the gardeners, we are all gardeners, according to her, with this example she's using. There are 4 ways in which we may water the plants through prayer. We may draw water up from a well by a bucket, very laborious, hard work, and when you pull the bucket out, some of the water gets spilt, and then you've still got to carry it and then water the plants. Or easier, we may pump the water up from the water source. Teresa didn't live in the age of where you turn a tap on. Same idea though. And then she said, even better for a gardener is if there is already a stream of water flowing through that can irrigate it. Or finally, a garden may be watered from the heavens above through having very good rains. So we're going to look at these ways and ask ourselves, where am I in my prayer life? So she comes back to this first one of saying that when we draw the water from the well, it's tiring exercise, and we may be tempted to give up on prayer because it seems we get so little water for all our efforts. But the early period of prayer, when we're using techniques or methods of thinking and our imagination to pray, and it's really not easy to pray because when we seek to be with God, our minds are frequently distracted. Isn't it interesting? I mean, there was Teresa writing in the Middle Ages. Here we are in 2023, and it's still the same problem, except that our minds are probably even busier than those worlds because we've got so many things bombarding us. And so it is true that we find it really difficult to be still, to be quiet, and simply be with God. I have a lovely example of something my mother picked up, and when I was on holiday with her, we made a joke of it, but it was a very good exercise to do. We would have a cup of coffee, in my case, a cup of tea in hers, and I would say, come on, it's now our chai moment. And then we would sit, and when you are sitting, you are simply sitting with your cup of coffee or your cup of tea, and you are drinking your cup of coffee or you are drinking your cup of tea, and you are not getting up and you are not doing anything, and you are not thinking about all the things you need to do. All you are doing in that moment is drinking your cup of coffee or your cup of tea. You can use whatever beverage you choose, but I think that's kind of a little example of a silencing, quietening technique, because we need them. We need to stop and just simply be, not think, just be. So the second reason Green points to why it may be so difficult for us to kind of persevere in prayer is because actually what is happening is that when we try to spend this time with Jesus, we have to confront ourselves. Well, it's not great. It really takes effort to actually relate to Jesus as the Christ, to get to know the Christ. If, however, we persevere, then of course prayer does become easier. It's like pumping that water or opening the tap. And Green illustrated it as far as he said, we still use our faculties, our reasoning, and our imagination to seek the experience of God, but much less labor with our faculties produces much more water. Perhaps for the first time we realize the meaning and the joy of prayer as we encounter with God in love. So we should say that this is a bit like getting to know a person. You know, in the first stage you've got all sorts of, hello, how's your name? Where'd you come from? If you were my father, what your mother and father's name, and your uncle and your aunt, and what were they doing? And, oh yeah, by the way, I know them. That kind of a conversation. Here now we're not asking questions. We're simply content to be in the company of the other person. We're still discovering who they are, but we don't plan our conversations or analyze the relationship. So talking and being silent are easier, they're more relaxed. And I found this very beautiful image again from Bruce McLaren, which helped me to understand what was happening in this process. He said, a friend once described a dream to me that he felt God had given him on my behalf. He had been watching a television show about a huge dam being built in China. The reservoir was taking many years to fill up, but once full, it would provide electricity for millions of people for centuries. In the dream, he watched the water level slowly rising. This, he felt, was to be a picture for me of my own life. During the long delays when nothing seemed to be happening, when nothing seemed to be working, when no power is being generated, in those silent times of waiting, potential energy is accumulating from which lasting power will flow in due time. I don't know why it is, but people often think that we as the clergy have arrived, you know? We've sorted out the problem of prayer. We just sit and we look beatific, and prayer just happens all so wonderfully. Of course, particularly if you're like me and you've been in the church forever, that's what they think. But I still do think that prayer is not an easy exercise. The image that Teresa uses of water flowing freely, whether from the stream or the rain, it's not so important. It shows really that we are always growing in our praying. And I do like this image because it means that whether prayer is difficult or whether it's easy is not important. God seems to be doing more and more of the work, and we seem to be doing less and less of the work. And the method of praying is not what is important. The water is simply there, and we have done nothing through our efforts to obtain it. I really do like that as a source of encouragement to me in my own prayer life, and for those moments when the Holy Spirit, who we were speaking about last session, really comes and surprises me completely. It means that more and more our time of prayer becomes a time we give to the Lord to shape and to transform. And the art of prayer as we grow is really the art of learning to waste time gracefully, to have our chai moments, as it were, to be simply clay in the hands of the potter. So yeah, I would say that it challenges me to always think about being constant, particularly when I think nothing is happening. I can't see the point of it all. Or I wonder if I'm not even just caught up in my own imagining, as it were, talking to myself. So, yeah, prayer is gardening. What about you, Gift? Can I shine your halo, or you still got work to do on prayer as well?
I find myself with lots of work to do on prayer. There are those silent moments, but there are relaxed moments with God. So I find my water coming in slowly, slowly.
Maybe it's a bit like load shedding affecting the taps. um, the reflections for this week are rather fun. I mean, this week we are asked to become conscious of the different ways in which we use water and to think about how God gives life to us through this gift of water and give thanks for the action we are performing. So it's like a mindfulness exercise, whether it is drinking, making tea or coffee. The reason I'm not drinking coffee here this afternoon is because we've got load shedding, whether we're washing, cleaning, gardening, whatever it may be. Then I read this wonderful example. Heidi Haverkamp offers us this exercise of doing a water fast. To do it, you drink only water. You eat as per usual. And maybe you'd like to try this on a Friday. It's a traditional fast day in which people used to be mindful of the passion of Jesus. And she writes, drink only water without ice and without flavoring. Hot or warm water is okay. Decide if you can realistically go without caffeine. If not, adjust accordingly. You may want to carry a water bottle with you in case only iced or chilled water is available where you may be in a restaurant or workplace or school. Every time you crave something besides plain water to drink, or you feel irritated or unsatisfied by it, remember and offer prayer for those who may not have clean water at all. Ask God, what am I truly thirsting for in my life right now? If at all possible, do not announce or reveal your fast to others outside your immediate family, if even to them. If you want, keep your fast for the whole weekend. I don't know how many of you are going to manage that. I'm not going to promise to try that. If you are feeling the need for an even greater challenge, keep your water only fast until next Friday. That will keep you all busy and out of mischief. And then the question you ask is, when you're finished this fast, whether it's a day or multiple days, how did it feel to quench only your thirst and not to drink for pleasure? Did you notice your thirst in a different way? Did you drink more or less than you usually would? Did it help you deepen in solitude with God, or was it just an irritation and inconvenient? So we have a final exercise, the wellspring. I'm just going to read it to you. You can do it in your own time. As a meditation, you're not meant to rush through it. Just gently let these words settle. I seek the source of refreshment, sustenance and healing that my spirit, like my body, is constantly in need of. I am made whole again. Myself is given back to me in solitude and silence. So now I seek to silence word and thought by being conscious of the sounds around me. Or the sensations of my body, or of my breathing. I am energized by love. So I recapture and relive the times when I have felt loved, cared for, and treasured. And I see myself going out in love to friends, to those who are in need, and to every living creature. I come alive in times of creativity. How does it find expression in my life? I get peace and healing from my roots in nature. I recall what happens when I am in harmony with earth and sky, and with mountains, rivers, and oceans, and nature's many moods, and nature's seasons. I find everything in prayer, which is for me fragrance and food, a home, a shield, a tonic. I recall the seasons of my prayer, the moments I cry out in despair, the days of glad thanksgiving, the times of stillness, presence, adoration. And I recite a prayer or song or poem that I have come to love, that I wish to have beside me all through life, and want my lips to say when I am dying. God bless you all.